Hello everyone, in this video I will show you a complete guide for the SILKBIND Jade path. I will explain the best inner ways, best attributes for tuning, best PvE and PvP skill rotations, and advanced tips and tricks. The Jade path is the hardest build to play in the game, but also the most rewarding when you play it right. It's a full DPS glass cannon build with almost no survivability, and this means it is among the highest DPS builds in the game, but at the same time you can die very easily. This build also has the highest crowd control potential in the game because the skill set consists of many abilities which can knock the enemy airborne or stun them, so it is designed for PvP, but it can excel in PvE as well. The playstyle revolves around knocking enemies airborne and dealing a lot of damage from close range, but also immobilizing enemies and dealing damage from a distance using projectiles. It's a combination of long range and close range DPS, and you can mix and match the playstyle to suit your needs, so it's a very versatile build. The build focuses on critical hits and stacking as much damage as possible, so all the attributes on your gear will focus on critical hits, agility and attack. We'll talk more about stats and gear later in the video. Let's start off with briefly explaining what each martial art does. Feel free to skip to the next part if you're already familiar with the skills. Unlike other builds, the Jade path doesn't really have a secondary and a main martial art. Most of the other paths will use one martial art for buffs and the other for DPS, but the Vernal Umbrella and Inkwell Fan complement each other so well that you must use them in tandem to get the most out of the build. The Spring Sorrow skill immobilizes enemies for 3 seconds and deals bonus HP damage to bosses. This will be one of your main buffing skills before you can unleash your DPS combo, and it shines in PvP if you can land it. The special skill Unfading Flower throws the umbrella in the air and it makes it shoot projectiles automatically at nearby enemies. It requires you to have 50 blossoms to use and it consumes 10 per second, so at a minimum it will last for 5 seconds. If this skill hits an enemy which is airborne or has lingering bone, it will consume an extra 10 or 15 blossoms per hit to deal 100% or 200% increased damage, and it extends the target's airborne or lingering bone duration. Blossom is the resource used by the Vernal Umbrella, which you can see in the shape of flower petals on the umbrella icon in the HUD. It is capped at 100 and you can earn it by dealing damage with the Vernal Umbrella. While Unfading Flower is active, you can switch to your Inkwell Fan and it will remain active until you run out of blossoms. The charged light attack is called Spring Away, and this is the most important skill in your kit for PvE. You rise in the air with the umbrella and start shooting projectiles at long range. In non-arena modes, for every 2 projectiles, the next one will deal scatter damage to nearby enemies, making it great for solo PvE farming. You can hold the button for this skill until you run out of stamina, and it deals a ton of damage at a very long range, so this will be your main DPS ability. The charge heavy attack makes you rise in the air with the umbrella, and it can be charged up to stage 2, after which you will drop down and unleash a large AoE attack. You won't be using this too often, so don't worry about it. Now let's talk about the martial arts talents. Trajectory skill enhancement gives your projectile skills 20 physical penetration when damaging an immobilized or airborne enemy, and makes your Unfading Flower special skill refund 3 blossoms per hit on such an enemy. Critical rate up gives you critical rate based on agility. Trajectory calculation gives you 2.4% critical damage for the umbrella projectile skills for every 50 min physical attack, up to 36% at 750 min physical attack. Silkbind attribute up gives you Silkbind penetration based on your minimum Silkbind attack. Attribute attack damage up gives you 50% more scaling on your skills based on your Silkbind attack. As you can see, the Vernal Umbrella will be your main DPS skill in PvE content, and it's very easy to land your skills and deal a lot of damage, especially in group content. However, in PvP it will be your secondary martial art because it's way too difficult to land your stuns and your projectile attacks can be easily parried. Moving on to the Inkwell Fan, which can be a supporting martial art in PvE and your main damage dealer in PvP. The Emerald Barrier skill knocks back nearby enemies and creates a wind barrier that blocks all non-boss units and enemy projectiles for 8 seconds. Casting this skill is the same as dodging, so you can use it to dodge enemy attacks as well. After using the skill, you gain 2 buffs, Wind Rider and Jade Break. Jade Break is your most important buff as it increases your projectile damage by 30% and by another 10% against boss enemies, It lasts for 15 seconds. Wind Rider lasts for 3 seconds and it enhances your next pursuit skill. Emerald Barrier is a great skill for zoning your enemies and defending against projectiles, while also buffing your Vernal Umbrella projectiles. Moving on to the special skill, pick Springless Silence, which is your most important PvP skill. You dash forward and launch humanoid enemies airborne. Hitting non-humanoid enemies applies Lingering Bone instead. Lingering Bone is a debuff lasting 0.8 seconds on non-boss units and 2 seconds on boss units. This debuff allows you to use pursuit skills against enemies which are not airborne. This debuff exists to allow you to use your full combo against boss enemies which are not humanoids. Hitting an enemy with this skill which is airborne or has Lingering Bone gives you Wind Rider, which enhances your next pursuit skill. You also summon a water clone at your original location, and pressing the skill button within 5 seconds will return you to the water clone. What exactly is a pursuit skill? This is the perception skill Moonshatter Spring, which is a variation of your heavy attack. If your heavy attack hits an enemy which is airborne or has Lingering Bone, you launch 3 consecutive strikes with the fan. If you have the Wind Rider buff, you launch 5 consecutive strikes instead. Hitting a non-player enemy with this skill deals 45% more damage and gives you a stack of Shattered Spring, increasing the damage of your charge skills by 4% for 15 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. The pursuit skill has 6 seconds cooldown, so you can spam it. You can see if your pursuit skill is ready to be used by checking the yellow fan icon in the middle of the screen whenever you apply Lingering Bone or knock an enemy airborne. This is your bread and butter skill for PvP, as you can keep enemies in the air and deal a lot of damage, and then return back to your original location safely. This skill is also great in solo PvE content against humanoid enemies, including bosses, as you can stagger them for a long time and deal huge damage. Lastly, we have the Charged Light attack, which launches a tornado forward and launches humanoid enemies airborne, while applying Lingering Bone to non-player enemies. You can use this instead of your special skill to trigger a pursuit skill, and if you use it in combination with your special skill, you will automatically enhance your pursuit skill because you get the Wind Rider buff. Now let's talk about the martial arts talents. Low Chi follow-up enhancement gives you 30% critical rate and 8% HP damage for the special skill when hitting targets with Chi below 30%. When dealing critical damage, each hit deals an additional 5 Chi damage. Physical attack up gives you minimum physical attack based on agility. Heavy attack pursuit increases the critical damage of your heavy attack pursuit skill by 2.4% for every 50 minimum physical attack, up to 36% at 750 minimum physical attack. Silkbind attribute up gives you Silkbind attack and increases your Silkbind damage bonus based on your minimum Silkbind attack. Attribute attack damage up gives you 50% more scaling on your skills based on your Silkbind attack. As you can see, the Inkwell Fan is great in PvP for setting up combos and buffing your umbrella projectiles, but it requires great positioning and timing. Now that we finished talking about martial arts, it's time to see what the most optimal combos are for both PvE and PvP. The most optimal skill rotation for PvE goes like this. Start with Inkwell Fan and use Emerald Barrier, then quickly switch to your umbrella. This will give you the Jade Break buff for 15 seconds, increasing projectile damage. Use your Spring Sorrow to apply the 20% damage buff from Blossom Barrage Inner Way. Use your Light Charge attack Spring Away on the target and keep holding the button. When you're getting close to 0 stamina, the skill will automatically stop and you will drop down to the ground. Use Spring Sorrow again to get a 20% damage buff, then use your special skill to throw the umbrella in the air and make it deal damage over time. Switch back to the Inkwell Fan and use Emerald Barrier again to buff your projectiles. Immediately use Peak's Springless Silence to dash to the target and apply Lingering Bone and knock up, then start spamming your heavy attack to initiate the pursuit skill. Since you have the Wind Rider buff from your Emerald Barrier, you will deal 5 hits total. While waiting for the Umbrella special skill to finish, so that you can switch back, use the Soaring Spin Mystic skill, which deals great damage in a short time. Now you should be back at full stamina, so use Emerald Barrier and switch to the Umbrella, then repeat the whole combo again. Keep repeating this over and over and you should get the maximum possible DPS. You can switch your special skill for the Charged Light attack instead if you want to play safer in harder group content. They both accomplish the same thing, which is applying Lingering Bone and knocking up the enemy, enabling your pursuit skills. Just make sure to use your pursuit skill immediately after using Emerald Barrier to trigger the 5-hit combo because of the Wind Rider buff. The PvP rotation is vastly different because the target is not stationary and your umbrella attacks can be easily dodged or parried, so this time your Inkwell Fan will be the main weapon. Start off with your Inkwell Fan and use Emerald Barrier, then look for opportunities to knock the enemy airborne, either using your Tornado or your special skill. Be careful not to waste your special skill, do not use it when the enemy has tenacity or you won't knock them airborne and you will get punished. In PvP, unfortunately, players can also dodge most of your skills by moving sideways, which is complete bullshit of course. Make sure to always have Emerald Barrier placed in front of you and kite the enemy around it since they can move through it. If the enemy is far away from you, switch to your umbrella and look for opportunities to stun them with Spring Sorrow. If you can land a stun, always expect them to use Serene Breeze to get out of it, so don't jump in the air immediately. Try to land your second stun, possibly catching them when they come in, and then you can use your Charged Light attack. The goal with the umbrella is to reach 50 blossoms, so you can use your special skill. Once you use it, switch to your Inkwell Fan and look for opportunities to knock the enemy airborne and use a pursuit skill. If you manage to pull this off while your umbrella special skill is active, you are pretty much guaranteed to win. Never use your umbrella projectile if the enemy is not stunned, because they will just parry all attacks and delete your chi bar. With this build in PvP, because of how poorly designed the whole PvP system is, you will have to use precise timing and positioning to land all of your skills and create openings, unlike the other classes which can mostly just mash buttons and perform well. It has a very high skill ceiling, so it will all depend on how well you play and how well you mix in your mystic skills. Just keep your distance, kite the enemy around and look for opportunities to either stun them or launch them in the air. Don't fight in close range or you will lose. For mystic skills we have the following recommendations for PvE. Golden Body for damage reduction, Ghost Bind for stunning enemies and keeping them in place to land your attacks easier, Meridian Touch, Celestial Seas and Cloud Steps to deal with various boss mechanics. For PvP mystic skills we have the following recommendations. Serene Breeze to get out of stagger, Cloud Steps as a gap closer, Meridian Touch to combo into Inkwell Fan special skill, Soaring Spin as a quick damage and gap closer skill, Leaping Toad as another gap closing skill that deals damage over time, and Drunken Poet plus Dragon's Breath to quickly apply a damage over time debuff to enemies. Now let's talk about inner ways which provide you with even more utility and offensive buffs. First we have the Blossom Barrage inner way, which is the most important one. This makes your Spring Sorrow hold 2 charges, and whenever you hit an enemy with it, they take 10% more damage from your projectile skills for 8 seconds. You get the following upgrades at tiers 1, 3, 4 and 6. At tier 1, damage bonus is increased to 20%. At tier 3, cast speed is increased by 30% and duration of the buff is increased to 15 seconds. At tier 4, in non-arena modes, get another 10% damage increase to your Spring Sorrow and it can hit up to 5 targets at a time. At tier 6, it can now hold 3 charges and whenever you hit an enemy with the skill, reduces the skill cooldown by 5 seconds and grants 25 blossoms. This inner way is what makes you deal a ton of damage with your Umbrella Charge Light attack in PvE, and this is why you want to always use it before your special skill or Charge Light attack. Next we have the Flying Gourds inner way, which gives you 2 charges to your Inkwell Fan special skill, but increases its cooldown by 3 seconds. You get the following upgrades at tiers 1, 3, 4 and 6. At tier 1, returning to the original location via the water clone reduces the skill cooldown by 3 seconds and increases movement speed by 20. At tier 3, hitting a target but failing to knock them airborne increases the damage of the next special skill within 15 seconds by 30% and reduces its cooldown by 3 seconds. At tier 4, after returning to the original location, increase the next light attack charge skill Tornado charging speed and movement speed by 50% within 3 seconds. At tier 6, when you successfully launch a target airborne or apply Lingering Bone, get a 2 seconds refund and resets the cooldown of the pursuit skill. For 3 seconds, each heavy attack follow-up hit on this target reduces the special skill cooldown by 1 second. This inner way is meant to buff your Inkwell Fan special skill, allowing you to spam it more often and enabling you to knock up enemies more often and use your pursuit skills more often. Its main purpose is for PvP, not PvE. Next we have the Star Reacher Inner Way, which gives you 5% physical attack for 8 seconds after applying Lingering Bones to the enemy, which means when you use your special skill or tornado skill. If you knock a target airborne, the bonus is doubled to 10%. You get the following upgrades at tiers 1, 3, 4 and 6. At tier 1, the damage bonuses are increased to 7.5% and 15%. At tier 3, the damage bonuses against exhausted or targets with chi below 20% are increased to 12.5% and 25%. At tier 4, the duration of the buff is increased to 12 seconds. At tier 6, damaging an airborne target or target with lingering bone, you deal 3% more HP damage if your HP is above 75%, and if it's below 75%, you restore HP equal to 10% of the damage dealt. This inner way gives you a massive damage boost whenever you apply Lingering Bone or knock enemies airborne, and at tier 6 it becomes a healing ability as well. Lastly, we have Thunderous Bloom, which gives you a massive damage buff called Spring Thunder when you move 15 meters within 3 seconds. This buff can stack up to 3 times and it consumes whenever you use a heavy or aerial heavy attack and light or light attack charge skill to increase their HP damage by 15%. You can only gain this buff once every 15 seconds and it lasts 12 seconds. You get the following upgrades at tiers 1, 3, 4 and 6. At tier 1, the distance required is reduced to 12 meters. At tier 3, the buff also gives you 15% chi damage. At tier 4, the number of stacks is increased to 5. At tier 6, while the Spring Thunder buff is active, hitting an exhausted target or target with chi below 30% with a heavy attack, aerial heavy attack, light attack or light attack charge skill restores 1 stack of Spring Thunder. This inner way is meant to reward you with a great damage buff if you are kiting enemies around and moving a lot. You can easily maintain this buff naturally by simply moving around while floating in the air or using your Inkwell Fan special skill at max distance and then returning to the clone. As you can see, most of the inner ways are pretty good and give you a great damage buff or utility. However, for group PvE, in order to obtain the maximum possible DPS over the duration of the fight, you should perform the following changes. Swap Flying Gourds for Morale Chant. Swap Thunderous Bloom for 5-fold bleed only if you have it at least tier 4. Swap Star Reacher for Invigorated Warrior only if you have it at least tier 4. Your final inner way setup for group PvE should be Blossom Barrage plus Morale Chant plus 5-fold bleed plus Invigorated Warrior. This should provide you with the highest possible single target DPS if all of your inner ways are at tier 6. Now it is time to move to the gear tab and talk about item sets, tuning attributes and more. First off, we want to use the Silkbind arsenal, and for Divinecraft use poison or fire, ideally fire. When it comes to gear sets, we are using Mist Willow and Beyond the Chill. Mist Willow gives you a 12% damage increase for your light attack and projectile skill when using a heavy attack or heavy attack pursuit skill, and vice versa. When both of these bonuses are active, you get a 12% damage increase of both your light attack projectile skills and the heavy attack pursuit skills. Hitting the enemy with any of these attacks will refresh the duration once every 2 seconds. This is basically a permanent 12% damage buff for the majority of your attacks when activated, and is very easy to activate. For the armor set, there are multiple options, but generally you can use the Beyond the Chill set, because it gives you a 40% damage reduction buff when you take a hit, and for 2 seconds after that. In order to activate the buff, you have to not take damage for 10 seconds while in combat. This buff is pretty easy to trigger in group PvE content, but for solo PvE and PvP is definitely not the best choice, as you will definitely get hit pretty often. In that case, you should use the Flawless Defense gear set. Now let's talk about the actual tuning and attuning attributes we should look for on our gear. How do we know which attributes are important for our build? The answer is pretty simple. We just need to go back and look at our talents and our skills and playstyle and see what stats they are focusing on. In our case, for the SILKBIND Jade path, we need the following minimum attributes to reach 100% efficiency on our talents. 175 agility, 750 minimum physical attack, 197 minimum Silkbind attack. If we look at our martial arts, inner ways, item sets and overall build playstyle, we can see that the core idea of the build is to deal as much damage as possible in as little time as possible, so that we end the fight quickly and avoid dying. The entire build revolves around dealing critical hits, and we have a lot of skills that give us critical rate and critical damage. We get critical rate from our critical rate up talent, 36% critical damage from our umbrella projectiles, 30% critical rate for our fan pursuit skills, and 36% critical damage for our fan pursuit skill. In order to take advantage of all these effects, we will need to ensure we have 100% precision rate and as much critical rate as possible. Remember that only precision hits can be critical hits, and critical rate is capped at 80%. You get around 16% from your talents, so you want to aim for 64% critical rate from your gear attributes. Even though our main focus is dealing critical hits, we don't want to fall into the trap of having zero affinity rate, because we want to avoid normal hits as much as possible, so it's good to aim for 20% affinity rate as well, to complement your 80% critical rate. You get 8% from your talents, so another 12% from your gear would be perfect. The priority order for your tuning attributes on all gear pieces should be the following. The first and most important attribute which you want to have on every single gear piece is agility. Why? Because agility is the best way to gain critical rate besides the actual critical rate attribute. Every 1 point of agility will give you 0.1% critical rate and 1.12 minimum physical attack, so you are getting two of the most important stats just from this one attribute. You want to try and get agility on all of your gear pieces and only stop when you reach 80% critical rate. Next we have critical rate, which is the best way to get our critical rate to 80%. You want to roll this on every single gear piece unless you already have 80% critical rate. Next, you want to roll precision rate until you reach 100%, then stop. Next, you want to roll minimum physical attack until you reach 750, to max out your trajectory calculation and heavy attack pursuit talents. Then, you want to get a minimum SILKBIND attack until you reach 197, to max out your SILKBIND attribute up talents. After you are done with reaching 100% on all of your talents, for the remainder of your tuning slots, you should focus on maximum physical attack or SILKBIND attack for more damage, and if you happen to get affinity rate, keep it. This is how an ideal min-maxed gear set would look like for the SILKBIND Jade path. Agility on all 80 gear slots, critical rate on all 8 gear slots, precision rate on 4 or 5 gear slots depending on how much you need to reach 100%, minimum physical attack on all 8 gear slots, minimum SILKBIND attack on 4 or 5 gear slots depending on how much you need to reach 197, max physical attack, max SILKBIND attack or affinity rate on the remainder of the slots. Your goals are to reach the critical rate cap, reach 100% efficiency on all talents, then reach 100% precision rate, and then as much physical attack or SILKBIND attack as possible. For attunement attributes priority for PvE, focus on the following. For weapons, you want to prioritize SILKBIND penetration, then physical penetration. For armor and accessories, you want to roll Vernal Umbrella charge skill damage boost, nothing else. For arena attunement attributes, prioritize the following. On one weapon, get the effect that makes the target take 12% increased damage over 5 seconds when using a defense break skill. On the other weapon, get the effect which deals 15 bonus chi damage and recovers 10 chi when breaking the target's defense with a defense break skill. On the disc, get the effect which restores 10 chi and reduces the cooldown of your pursuit skill if you use it before returning to the water clone. On the pendant, get the effect which makes your umbrella charge attack skill deal 1 bonus chi damage and apply spring spirit when hitting a non-defending unit. On the helmet, get the effect which increases your HP and chi damage by 20% for 5 seconds when using a control removing skill. On the armor, get reduced damage taken from martial arts skills and special skills. On the bracers, get chi recovery by consecutive deflections. On the greaves, get the effect which restores chi after dodging an enemy attack. Now it's time for some advanced tips and tricks. For PvE, just make sure to keep your emerald barrier active when using the umbrella charge attack, and maintain a clean rotation for group content to maximize your DPS. For solo PvE against humanoid enemies, think of it like you're playing PvP against a very bad player. You can do whatever you want, knock them up, knock them down, do any type of combo you want because they won't dodge or parry anything. Remember that your fan pursuit skill has a 6 seconds cooldown, so don't use 2 special skills in quick succession or the second one will be wasted. If your emerald barrier happens to be on cooldown and you have low stamina, you can chain your tornado attack into special skill with the Inkwell Fan to perform an enhanced pursuit skill. Your umbrella special skill can extend the duration of lingering bone and airborne, so you can do 2 pursuit skills back to back if you have it active. Just keep an eye out for the yellow fan icon, indicating that the pursuit skill is ready to be used. For PvP, enemies will always try to either dodge or parry all of your skills, including your Inkwell Fan special skill. For this reason, if you see them play defensively, bait out their parry with a tornado skill and then chain into the special skill and pursuit skill. In PvP, you can chain Meridian Touch into the fan special skill for a guaranteed pursuit skill hit, which is unparryable. Just press the Meridian Touch button and immediately when you reach the enemy, spam your special skill, which will stop the returning back portion of the skill, and chain into your special skill, allowing for an easy knockup. After entering combat, your Vernal Umbrella will automatically start gaining blossoms even without attacking with it. You can notice this by checking the umbrella icon in the HUD. I'm not sure why this is not mentioned anywhere, but it is very important for PvP. In PvP, it is very difficult to land attacks with the umbrella to charge your special skill, but since it charges over time, if you can stall out the match a little bit until you get enough blossoms to use a special skill, you're pretty much guaranteed to win. When you see the umbrella is charged about halfway through, switch to it, use the special skill, and then immediately switch to the fan, close in on the enemy, and try to get a knockup. Remember that your Emerald Barrier acts both as a dodge and also as a knockdown skill. When you're fighting someone at close range, you can use it to deal damage and knock them down, or wait for them to come in and then use it at the last second as a perfect dodge to interrupt their skill and keep a safe distance. Remember that you can pass through the Emerald Barrier using your fan special skill and other dashing skills, but the enemy players can also do that, so be careful. In PvP, when trying to use your Spring Sorrow skill to stun the enemy, it is guaranteed that they will get out of the stun using Serene Breeze if you manage to land it. Be prepared for this, so use both of your charges 2 times in quick succession without doing any charge light attack. Why? Because they deal a lot of damage, especially chi damage, and because 2 uses of this skill will generate 40 blossoms, leaving you just 10 short of using the special skill and basically ending the fight. For PvP, do not rely on the charge light attack of the umbrella at all, even though it's your highest DPS skill, because it is almost impossible to find a window to use it, and even if you do manage to stun the enemy and they can get out, you will only have 3 seconds to use it, after which you will be very vulnerable. It is best used as a finisher skill or to get the enemy exhausted. This build is very strong in both PvP and PvE, and while it is very easy to play in PvE, in PvP it is very difficult to pull off, so expect to lose many matches until you get used to it. Hopefully this video has helped you understand how the SILKBIND Jade path works and how to maximize your DPS and perform the best combos. For my next video I will do a guide for the Bellstrike Splendor path and then finish it off with SILKBIND Deluge. Leave a comment below if you have any other tips and tricks for the SILKBIND Jade path. That would be it for this video, and if you found this information helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.